Welcome back to a news bulletin. In Brazil, 990 more people have died from the new coronavirus in the past 24 hours, raising the total to nearly 56,000. While in Mexico, 719 people have died in a day, taking the total to nearly 26,000. Worldwide, the death count has crossed 493,000 with over 9.7 million cases. More in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic has picked up speed in the Americas, affecting the rest of the world at the same time. Colombia's President Ivan Duque has called Venezuela a public health time bomb. He says the lack of reliable information about his neighbor's coronavirus outbreaks is a worry. Venezuela has reported just 4,600 infections and 39 deaths, while Colombia has recorded around 80,600 cases and more than 2,600 deaths. Meanwhile, the US has reported the highest single-day increase in COVID-19 cases with over 45,000 testing positive overnight. The US Infection Disease Chief Dr. Anthony Fauci has warned younger people that they can be posing a risk to older people who may be more vulnerable to the virus.
The overwhelming majority now of people getting infected are young people, likely the people that you see in the clips and in the paper who are out in crowds enjoying themselves, understandably. No blame there, understandably. But the thing that you really need to realize that when you do that, you are part of a process. So if you get infected, you will infect someone else who clearly will infect someone else. We know that happens.
The European Union plans to bar travelers from the US, Brazil, and Russia due to a continued surge in coronavirus infections in the three countries. While the UK says it will lift its 2-week quarantine rule for visitors arriving from some low-risk countries after pressure from tourism sector. The World Health Organization says it will deliver 2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine to the world by the end of 2021.
It's clear that to bring COVID-19 under control and to save lives, we need effective vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics in unprecedented quantities and at unprecedented speed. And it's clear that because all people are at risk of COVID-19.
Meanwhile, mainland China has reported 21 new cases of coronavirus.
Meanwhile, India has reported its biggest single-day surge in coronavirus cases, adding 18,500 new infections. The South Asian country has now over 500,000 infections, with nearly 16,000 deaths due to the pandemic. The health ministry said 385 more people died from the coronavirus in the past 24 hours. Experts say the pandemic is not expected to peak in India for several more weeks, and the number of cases could surpass 1 million before the end of July. The virus has particularly hit India's densely populated cities, while there are now major concerns for New Delhi, which has overtaken Mumbai with nearly 80,000 cases. Some state governments in India are now considering to impose new lockdowns. In Pakistan, the COVID-19 death toll has crossed 4,000 with 74 fatalities in the past 24 hours. The health ministry said over 3,100 people tested positive for the virus overnight, bringing the total to nearly 200,000. It said so far nearly 87,000 people have recovered, while over 2,700 remain critical. The ministry said about 108,000 cases are active in the country. It said the province of Punjab has reported the most cases with 1,656 infections in a day. The southern province of Sindh recorded 1,205 infections, while the capital Islamabad registered 120 infections since yesterday. In another news, Pakistan has welcomed US Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's statement over the restoration of rights of Kashmiris. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Pakistan has gradually shared its narrative to the world community over Kashmir. Yesterday, Biden asked India to take necessary steps to restore the rights of Kashmiris. He also expressed disappointment over the Citizenship Amendment Act and the implementation of the NRC in Assam. Now, Pakistan says it is ready to reopen the Kartarpur corridor on 29 June on the occasion of the death anniversary of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. In a statement, the Foreign Office said Pakistan has invited India to work out necessary SOPs to ensure adherence to the health guidelines. The spokesperson said the corridor was temporarily closed on March 16th due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Kartarpur corridor was inaugurated in November last year on the 550th birth anniversary of Baba Guru Nanak. The Sikh community all over the world immensely appreciated Pakistan for this landmark initiative. Iraq says it has killed 24 ISIS militants in a security operation backed by airstrikes in Salahuddin province. The army said it carried out a two-day operation against the ISIS militants in the mountainous Al-Khanouga area of the province. It said the operation resulted in the killing of 16 militants in the first day and 8 others in the second. The military said Iraqi and coalition raids destroyed a number of hideouts and several caves and tunnels. The operation came as ISIS militants have intensified their attacks on the security forces, including Hashabi forces. ISIS gained full control in Mosul, Salahuddin and Anbar provinces and seized territories in the Diyala and Kirkuk provinces in 2014, but Iraqi security forces managed to regain control in subsequent years. Israel says its warplanes have targeted multiple locations in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Ministry says it struck Hamas infrastructure and military posts in retaliation to a rocket fire. No casualties have been reported so far. The rockets were fired a day after Hamas warned of violence over Israeli plans to annex parts of the occupied West Bank. Meanwhile, hundreds of Palestinians demonstrated in the West Bank and Gaza Strip against Israel's annexation plans. Clashes broke out between the demonstrators and the Israeli forces in several West Bank towns and villages. The protesters were carrying banners reading, "Palestinians are sticking to their lands and reject annexation." Russia says it has intercepted 3 U.S. spy planes of the Black Sea and escorted them away from its borders. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said Su-30s detected U.S. aircraft while approaching the Russian borders over the neutral waters. The ministry said the Russian fighter jets approached the air objects at a safe distance. It said the U.S. planes immediately changed the direction from the border of Russia. The statement said the flight of the Russian aircraft took place in strict accordance with international rules for the use of airspace. It said after completing the task, the Russian fighter returned safely to the home airfield. Germany says it will continue constructive dialogue with Russia as Moscow has strategic influence in Syria and Libya. In an interview, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel said there are good reasons to maintain talks with Russia. Merkel said countries like Syria and Libya are Europe's immediate neighbor, where Russia has great strategic influence. She said Germany and Europe should continue to strive for cooperation with Russia. At the same time, Merkel accused Moscow of hybrid warfare, saying it has become a Russian behavior pattern. Moscow has consistently rejected West's accusation of destabilizing activities. Now, Russia says the U.S. media's false information about Moscow and Kabul has led to direct threats against the Russian diplomats. This comes after a leading U.S. paper published a report accusing Moscow of being the mastermind behind American soldiers killing in Afghanistan. In a tweet, Russia's embassy in Washington said the U.S. is spreading lies using baseless and anonymous accusations. The embassy said the authors of the article lack information on cooperation between Russia and the U.S. on the Afghan peace process. It said Russia demands the U.S. to take effective measures and fulfill their diplomatic obligations under the Vienna Convention. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government has strongly criticized the U.S. Senate's Hong Kong Autonomy Act. In a statement, a government spokesperson urged the U.S. Congress to stop interfering in Hong Kong's internal matters. The spokesperson rejected the sanctions, saying the move will harm the bilateral relations between Hong Kong and Washington. He said no other state or legislature has the right to intervene in the implementation of one country, two systems principle in the territory. In response to the allegations of persecuting dissent, the spokesperson said Hong Kong has an independent criminal judicial system. Earlier on Friday, the U.S. Senate unanimously approved the legislation laying out sanctions on Chinese officials who undermine Hong Kong's autonomy. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Washington is imposing visa curbs on Chinese officials over the obstruction of Hong Kong's freedom. In a statement, Pompeo called on Beijing to honor its commitment to allow Hong Kong a high degree of autonomy. He said the US visa restrictions apply to current and former Communist Party officials who are believed to be responsible for undermining the city's autonomy. Pompeo said China is pressuring local authorities to disqualify pro-democracy electoral candidates. Responding, Chinese embassy spokeswoman Fang Huang said Beijing opposes Washington's wrongful decisions. She urged the US to immediately correct its mistakes and stop interfering in China's domestic affairs. Washington's announcement comes in response to Beijing's move to impose new security legislation on Hong Kong. US Defense Secretary Mark Esper has urged the NATO members to meet a target of spending 2% of their GDP on defense. The United States sought the target first in 2019. Speaking ahead of a meeting with NATO Secretary General, Esper said member states need to do much more to ensure collective security. He said the two leaders will discuss issues ranging from Afghanistan to the coronavirus response, while NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said they will also discuss the US military presence in Europe. He said the issue is on the forefront, particularly in respect of Washington's plan to reduce presence in Germany. Earlier, President Donald Trump announced reducing US troops in Germany following his criticism of Berlin for not spending more on defense. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. Ireland's Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Green Party have agreed to form a new coalition government, ending a 4-month-long stalemate. Fianna Fáil leader Michelle Martin is set to be elected as the Prime Minister at a special meeting of Parliament later today. The general elections were held in February, but no party received a majority and the pandemic halted the coalition talks. The two larger parties needed the support of the Greens to have a working majority in the Parliament. Earlier in June, the parties agreed to elect Martin as a Prime Minister for 2.5 years and Fine Gael leader Leo Varadkar for the remaining term. In a tweet, Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson congratulated Ireland on the new government. The leaders of Sudan, Ethiopia and Egypt have agreed Addis Ababa will not start filing its Nile dam without reaching an agreement within 2 weeks. In a statement, Cairo and Khartoum said Ethiopia will return to talks aimed at reaching an accord on use of Nile River's waters. Ethiopia's water minister said the three countries will agree on a deal to fill the dam in 2 to 3 weeks. This comes after a video conference of African Union chaired by South Africa on the matter. African Union Chairman Musa Faki Mohammed said the leaders have agreed to an AU-led process to resolve outstanding issues. Turkey says it has killed 3 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in an operation in southeastern Hakkari province. In a statement, the Interior Ministry said the militants were killed in the Kavakli region in an air-backed operation. The ministry said the operation is underway in the region. It said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon caches and shelters used by the terrorists. Turkey holds the PKK responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. The Mexican authorities have found another 14 bodies in the north-central state as the Zacatecas as the gang violence worsens in the country. In a statement, the state government said the investigation is underway to determine the cause of death. Earlier, 16 people were found dead in Mexico's western state of Sinaloa. The state officials said the people were killed in gunfights that took place in the violence-plagued region controlled by drug lord El Chapo Guzman. Meanwhile, Mexico City's chief of police has been shot and wounded in an assassination attempt. The chief blames Jalisco New Generation cartel for the attack, in which 2 of his bodyguards were killed. Mexico City's Attorney General's office said police have arrested 12 suspects in connection with the assassination. In the US, a federal court has ordered the release of migrant children held with their parents by the American Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. The ruling applies to children held for more than 20 days at 3 family detention centers in Texas and Pennsylvania. Citing the spread of the virus in 2 of the 3 facilities, the judge said there was no time to take half measures. The court set a deadline of July 17th for children to either be released with their parents or sent to family sponsors. The court said the agency was detaining 124 children on top of around 1,000 children in custody of the Health and Human Services Department. Meanwhile, an appeals court said the White House lacked authority to divert $2.5 from the Pentagon to build part of the Mexico border wall. Amnesty International has started a petition to draw the world's attention on the plight of Rohingya refugees amid the pandemic. The petition addresses the governments of the US, Australia, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. In a statement, it said the rights of Rohingya continue to be violated without constant international support and responsibility sharing. The group said some refugees, including women, have been victims of harassment and coercive quarantine measures. Over 750,000 refugees fled Myanmar to Bangladesh after a military crackdown on the minority Muslim community in 2017. NASA's decade-long mission observing the sun from an orbiting satellite has produced a stunning time-lapse video. For over 10 years, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory has watched the sun using an array of instruments. It took the 425 million high-resolution images every 0.75 seconds from its orbit around the Earth. In a video released on NASA's website, the 10-year time-lapse condensed into 61 minutes shows the outermost part of the sun's atmosphere. NASA says these images are taken at the extreme ultraviolet wavelength of 17.1 nanometers to capture the outer atmosphere. It says the video shows the rise and fall of the solar cycle and other notable events such as transiting planets and solar eruptions. China is making efforts to develop characteristic industries that facilitate the achievement of high-quality poverty alleviation. From growing black fungi to turning straw into animals' feed, villagers are all opt to be part of the program. More about these small industries in this report.
In the northwest Shaanxi province, locals have started cultivating black fungi, often used in the Chinese cuisine. It is usually sold in dried form, and a cup of dried fungus contains 19.6 grams of dietary fiber. While almost tasteless, it is priceless for its slippery but slightly crunchy texture and its potential nutritional benefits. Farmers say they are making good money out of the small industry.
Thanks to sufficient rain, the black fungi grow well. It will bring in over 50,000 yuan this season from the yield of the farmlands and the greenhouses. As General Secretary Xi said, we're a small black fungi but big industry. We are particularly confident that we can make this industry a good one.
The Butuo County in southwest China's Sichuan province is yet to be lifted out of poverty. The officials found it is of great potential to help local people with scaled pig-raising industry. Therefore, they helped villages build standardized farmhouses, introduced pulverizers to turn waste straw into feed, and guided villagers to improve skills on scientific breeding.
Next, we will further mobilize all kinds of resources in Deqing County, encouraging enterprises in Deqing County to give more priority to providing jobs for registered poor households in Butuo County, so as to accomplish the task of poverty alleviation with high quality.
Each of the 8 villages in Butuo County has a poverty alleviation team. These teams help in all aspects from industrial development to relocating impoverished residents from inhospitable areas.
Since COVID-19 pandemic has stalled projects across the globe, it is also jeopardizing a pioneering northern white rhino conservation project. The project is facing delay as international travel restrictions have forced biorescue to delay some of its key procedures. Let's find out more in this report.
The northern white rhino is on the brink of extinction after the last known living male died in Kenya's Ol Pejeta Conservancy in 2018. Once found in several countries in East and Central Africa, its numbers fell sharply due to heavy poaching. The only surviving northern white rhinos now are mother and a daughter, Nain and Fatu, both infertile, making them the world's most endangered mammal. But researchers and conservation organizations have joined forces to save subspecies using pioneering artificial reproduction techniques. Researchers are harvesting immature egg cells from animals and fertilizing them with frozen sperm from diseased males.
Biorescue is trying to utilize the most advanced assisted reproduction technologies combined with stem cell technologies and to produce in vitro embryos which then will be transferred into surrogate mothers and at the end to produce a viable, genetically sound population.
After 2 successful procedures to harvest oocytes in August and December last year, travel restrictions have forced scientists to postpone further procedures planned for May. Scientists said they are under huge time constraints because the 2 remaining female rhinos are aging, which will risk losing the creature.
We couldn't travel, we had to cancel our trips to Kenya, so that actually means we're losing time in our ambitious program. However, we found an alternative threat. Every scientist of our consortium was working national-wise to improve technologies, to make these things better, so that when we go back to Kenya, we will be even more effective and we will be more successful.
Scientists are hoping to deliver their first northern white rhino calf in 3 years and a wider population in the next 2 decades, bringing species back from the brink of extinction.
In Taiwan, dragon boat races have competed in a scaled-back festival amid the COVID-19 fears. Athletes paddled vigorously in unison to beat off the drum on the Keelong River. More in this report.
Dragon boat racing has become a sport in Taiwan now. This festival has its roots in Chinese folklore and is held annually. Taiwanese athletes held the competition amid the pandemic fears. Before the event, spectators have to undergo a temperature screening and follow social distancing measures in the venue. Athletes have to cover a distance of 500 meters while the bystanders cheered the athletes.
The Dragon Boat Festival this year is very different from previous years. In the years when there was no coronavirus, there were traffic jams, many vendors around, and many unions would distribute free rice dumplings. Everyone enjoyed it and ate rice dumplings during lunchtime.
Due to lingering coronavirus fears, the festival was downsized. Organizers scaled back the numbers of athletes in this year's races to 2,400. Last year, there were more than 6,000 participants.
Because we had to keep a social distance due to the pandemic at the very beginning, we were worried that we could not do the training or even join the competition. We even wore masks during the training and sweated a lot to prepare for the race. Later, when the coronavirus was more stable, we did not stop training, tried our best to row, and did our best.
Taiwan's early and effective response has kept the pandemic at bay with just 446 infections and 7 deaths.
Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.